What a lot of people don't get about being a leader is it's not a crown to wear. It is something that you are a servant in.
My relationship with God is so crucial because I'm a follower before I'm a leader. So the reason why I feel like I actually even have something to give is because I'm receiving first.
What do you think is the greatest leadership attributes, people that you enjoy following, that you would go to battle with?
It is based on values, that you are following them and you are allowing them to influence you based predominantly on who they are and what they represent and the way they live their life through values and integrity.
I'm likely to follow a leader who's real. I'm likely to be more vulnerable with a leader who's vulnerable. And vulnerability begets vulnerability.
When we get out of the mode of serving ourselves and we look at serving other people, helping other people reach their goals in life, helping to raise other people to a different station of life, that's when we truly start living our lives, because that is what our purpose is in life.
This is Sparta!
How are you keeping yourself at the top of your game? I know you've talked about improv, you talked about Toastmasters, you're continually growing. We're both part of Arte Syndicate. Is there any other ways that you're growing right now to make sure that you're at the top of your game to continue influencing all these business leaders that you're coaching and helping?
I think that the problem most people face is they don't embed their mind with new information on a daily basis. So part of my daily routine is reading every day. Really the last 30 minutes of the day, I'll lay in bed and I'll actually read a physical book. Now, while I'm driving or I'm at the gym, I actually listen to audiobooks and podcasts. I'm always learning something. So I call that my learn and burn session, right? Like me getting out of the house, because we both work at home. My wife is in real estate. We go to the gym to get out of the house. That's like our commute for the day, right? And I put the earbuds in. I'm not listening to music. I can hear the background music in the gym. It's very loud, but I'd rather listen to audiobooks and podcasts and things that I can learn while I'm actually working out. And so as much as I love music, I've replaced all of that time with learning things. And I think that a lot of times people will come to you and like, hey, how do you come up with this content? Like, I want to create a YouTube channel. I want to create a podcast. They know they want to do something, but their big objection that they have is like, how do I come up with ideas? It's like, if you don't have ideas, it's because you're not learning something new every day. Because if you were, you will have these aha moments. You'll have new perspectives. You'll have different things that you thought that you knew maybe a year ago that you don't agree with nowadays, because you've gained a new perspective or you've learned something new or a little bit more detail behind it. You go, you know what? I thought about that. So you will always have new ideas for content as long as you're learning new things every day.
What is your belief in who should have a coach and what should they be looking for?
I think that we all need coaches. I think at every level.
Agreed.
I mean, think about this. When I was working, even in the corporate level, I'm working for Fortune 100, top 100 of the 500, right? And I started to notice that the executives had multiple coaches. Like, I was friends with some of these vice presidents, like at Chevron and things like that. These guys had speaking coaches. These guys had, business coaches. They had financial coaches. Some of these guys had 3 or 4 coaches. And I'm thinking like, wow, like that's how you do it. And I remember really just admiring somebody's speaking ability one time. And I was probably in my late 20s. And I was like, man, you're a really naturally gifted speaker. And he's like, no, I'm not. He goes, I actually hired a speaking coach and I worked with him for a year and a half. And that's why I can do this. And so I realized like, okay, this is how successful people think. So when you're broke, or let's say you're middle class, like I grew up, both of those, right? Anytime you come up with a challenge, we think about, how am I going to solve this? How am I going to fix this? It's always like, how am I? How am I? Successful people think, who do I know that can solve this? It's always about who, like, who knows this answer? Who can get me there? Who can I hire to get that result? Who do I need to hire to take this off my plate? It's always like the who is the answer versus the how. Yeah. And when I started to make that shift, probably about 15 years ago, I started to realize like every problem or challenge that we have is not unique. There's been thousands, if not millions of people before us that have had that same problem, whatever the problem is. Like, there's no unique problems. Why are you not using the people's resources and knowledge to get that answer and get you past that so you can move on to the next challenge?
So good. So what they should be looking for, because you and I both know there's some crap out there as well. We'll put that nicely. Yeah. What should they be looking for in a coach?
Yeah, be careful of the coaches out there that are really transactional in relationships. I've seen this too many times, especially in this space. It's really kind of disgusting, to be honest. And you'll find these people because they don't really support you until you pay them. And then they basically shut off the valve and they quit engaging and supporting you when you're no longer paying them. So that's a very transactional relationship. Like
Yeah.
you're only going to get their attention in the window of you cutting them the first check and then sending them the last check. Now, the thing about that, good coaches will support you no matter where you are, whether you're before hiring you, while you're hiring, and then after you're hiring. And that's because they actually care. They're not worried about transactional relationships. They're actually looking for long-time relationships that will last decades. Now, to give an example of this, when I first launched my mastermind groups, those are 6 to 8 people in each. I put out a little application and I said, hey guys, I'm going to start these mastermind groups. Apply here and we'll kind of see if you're a good fit. And then I'll build the groups around the information that you share. It's a questionnaire essentially. Guys, I had 2 of these people that joined that were staff members of mine 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I helped both of them build 7-figure companies. I mean, they're mid 7-figure company business owners. And they said, hey, I want to get to the next level. And one of them was like, I want to sell my business. They came back to me 20 years later to hire me as their coach. And it blew me away because I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that my old audience was like going to be my current client list. And you don't get that by looking at transactional relationships. Now, the other question I think about is, was this person really successful before they became a coach? Because there's a lot of people out there, including New York Times bestsellers and influencers and things like that. I'm not going to mention any names, but a lot of people only became successful as a coach or as their book blew up. But they're trying to teach you about prosperity and success and things like that. It's like they can't teach you to get there because they never got there until they started teaching other people how to do it. So always do the Google search, always figure out what their background is, start to understand what their core values are, understand that, yeah, people can improve and change, but sometimes people don't. Sometimes people just hide it a little bit better.
How did the early experiences and transition out of college prepare you to be the man today? Because you're leading a big ministry, you're running a business, you're running a family and a household, you're busy and you're pouring it. And a lot of people, that's what a lot of people don't get about being a leader is it's not a crown to wear. It is something that you are a servant in. And so you're serving a lot of people. A lot of people need Mike O'Connell. They need you. They need a piece of you. And you feel that pressure. So how did that pressure that you've gone through earlier in life prepare you to be the man today? And how do you deal with that pressure of people needing you from a church level, family level, business level?
Yeah, I mean, something that I learned through my journey in athletics is just keep showing up, and I've learned through all the things I've walked through in life that, when you're faithful with little, you can be trusted with much. For me, again, you said it, we're men of faith. And so the thing that's helped me carry the pressure of leadership and be a good steward of the leadership is I always say this is, just because you're a leader, you can't forget to be led. So for me, that's why my relationship with God is so crucial, because I'm a follower before I'm a leader. And really, leadership should just be an outflow of being led by Him. So the reason why I feel like I actually even have something to give is because I'm receiving first. And I always say this is, you can teach what you know, but people will catch what you carry. So leader, what are you carrying? And so I've just learned how to, process through the stuff and continue to be led. It keeps me in a posture of humility. I'm not looking to get something as a leader. I'm looking to give something. I talk about this whole concept of lead different. There are some leaders, man, that really do have the heart of a servant that, man, they want to serve rather than be served. Their vision for others is greater than even their vision for themselves. We saw that with Jesus's life. And I want to be that kind of leader. And sometimes I get it right. And sometimes I don't. But all I've known is, man, bloom where you're planted. Like, what's the seed that's in your hand today? How do you sow that seed? Because you'll never reap fruit on seed that you hold on to. I see a lot of people that, have leadership potential and they've got seed in their hands, but they're not sowing it. And I've just learned, man, to sow what I've got. And through, a number of different experiences, God just continues to do exceedingly abundantly above all I could think, ask, or imagine. And that started for me, man. If I can just be really frank and honest, is, my dream after college was to be a professional football player. And so I pursued that. I got to work out for the Miami Dolphins, didn't get signed. I came out the year of the NFL lockout, so it was kind of crazy times. I ended up playing one season in the UFL, which was 11 on 11 outdoor football. I think 45 of the 53 guys on our roster had played in the NFL. So it was great. It was a great league. And after the season, I went out to California. I was training out there and, just trying to get another shot. And that was the moment, 2012, June of 2012, where I just felt this shift where I really sensed that it was time to hang up the cleats. I really sensed that God had something different for my life, and I didn't know what that was. And sometimes that can be the toughest place to be, is in the midst of a pivot. I mean, this was a pivot. There was no plan B for me. When you're pursuing pro football, I mean, all your chips are in. And I remember, I'll never forget this. It was July 2nd, 2012. I felt like, man, I feel like I'm supposed to go out and be a part of this church in Omaha, Nebraska. I had no job, no place to live. I drove 30 straight hours on July 2nd, 2012. And I landed here in Omaha, Nebraska a decade ago. And so here I am, a decade later. And I just look at the last decade, and I just really do. I feel like I'm living in the promised land. I feel like I'm reaping a ton of fruit. And I think it started with a seed. It started with a step. It started by embracing the unknown, taking the courageous step. And so I want to tell people that, people might look at my life now and say, hey, you're making a difference, you're serving people. And I see even so much more, but it started with just a small step. It started with a lot of lonely hours, a lot of behind the scenes, and I think that's where true humility, true Godfidence, true character, true courage is built. It's built in a lonely space. Like you just better believe it, that if you see any sort of leader making an impact, the question you should be asking is, what are they doing behind the scenes? Because I promise you, every person that's making an impact, it's all the stuff that they're doing behind the scenes that's really helping them make a difference.
I know all of your clients really, really focus on mission, vision, values. Why is that so important for you to keep everyone so focused on that? I think in general, people hear these buzzwords and they know that they should have them, but why is it so important?
Yeah, the mission, vision, and principles or values, the MVP, I call it, is so important because it serves as a rudder for your boat. I tried sailing a few years ago, and I forgot to put the rudder down, but I forgot to put the centerboard in. And the wind came and it just spun me. It was awful. And that's what happens when you don't have an MVP. You spin. Now, it might not be as obvious as that boat was for me, because you can go a little bit in the boat until the wind comes. But once it comes and you don't have your MVP, you spin. Some people spin for years and they don't know it. I've had clients say to me, Jason, help me get off this hamster wheel. That's what he called it. The hamster wheel is spinning. That's what happens without a mission, vision, and values. So the mission is why you do what you do. And Simon Sinek, go watch one of his videos on this. It's a TED talk that he does on the why. It's fantastic.
Start with Why is his book.
Yeah, and he talks about in this video, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he doesn't say I have a plan. He says I have a dream, right? He had the dream before the plan. That's the mission. That's the dream. It's why you're doing what you're doing. If you have a plan, but you don't know why you're doing, you could have all the greatest hows in the world. But if you don't have your why, the hows are going to spin because it's not grounded in the why. That's the mission. And then the vision is the what and the how. The vision is the what and the how. So great, you got your why. And most visionaries are good at that part, but then they don't have the what and the how. What is it that you're going to do and how are you going to do it? And again, without both of those, the mission and the vision, things get tough. We start to spin them. And then lastly are the values. And this is the one that's the most misunderstood and often the most neglected. The values are the who. Who are you on this journey? And I always say it this way, and then entrepreneurs start to raise their right eyebrow when they hear me say this. The values, if they're right, those 7 words that you create for your organization and you, that's how you'll make all your decisions.
Mm-hmm.
If you make a decision that's not aligned with one of those values, it's the wrong decision for you. It has to be aligned, or the values aren't right. One of the two, because you're always going to decide what to do based upon those values. So once you have that mission, the why, the vision, the how and the what, and the values, the who in place, now each quarter, that 12-week year, it's another great book, is going to end up being, it's going to just be easier, right? That's why we get back to the quarterly building blocks. Those quarterly building blocks are easy once you've got those why, what, how, and who in place, because now you've got the centerboard in, you've got the rudder down, the wind's coming in, and your sailboat's going exactly the direction that you need to go.
Yep. And to add to that, on the values side, I think that can be the most important tool you have for many of things. For instance, having a difficult conversation with an employee.
Yes.
Right. So, if standards are there, values are there, and they're not abiding by those values, or they're doing something wrong, you can point right to those values and say, this is exactly who we are and what we represent. And you are not living up to that based on this example, and this example. If you don't have those, then it's a constant moving target for any employee in your organization. Alpha vulnerability is a phrase I coined because I believe that you can be both an alpha and vulnerable at the same time. And I believe you do this well. I don't think you've always done it well, but I think you're doing it really well right now. So why is it so important to be vulnerable as a leader?
We all want to be real. You want someone to know the real you. Like, we all want to be seen. We want to be known. It's the most basic human need, is just the need to be known. But for me to be known, for somebody to truly know me, I have to be real with other people. And so I'm likely to follow a leader who's real. I'm likely to be more vulnerable with a leader who's vulnerable. And vulnerability begets vulnerability. Craig, we always talk about Craig Rochelle, but I just think he's got such great substance on the subject matter. He said people can be impressed with your strengths, but they connect to you through your weaknesses. So if we want to connect with people, if we want to build real, meaningful relationships, then as leaders, we have to do a better job of showing people the real us, and I'm not talking about just like owning mistakes or saying I'm sorry when you mess up. It's like, hey, I want to tell you a few things about who I am and where I struggle. And we all know, like, when somebody shares that from a stage or they share that in front of the room, like, we're like, I like this person. Like, this is my kind of guy, or this is my kind of gal, like when in our coaching practice, Josh, when we're onboarding a client or we're in a kind of a discovery conversation, and I'll do this with NFL athletes and NBA players. And like, we have people of influence that we're having conversations with, and I'll just lead with like, hey, I need to tell you who I'm not. This is who I'm not. These are things I am not good at. And I need you to know that. And so I want to call these things out up front and just make you aware of some areas where I'm not going to be able to help you. And I can feel it when I lead that way, rather than leading with my strengths and all the reasons that they should hire us and work with us. It is a different type of conversation that leads to a different type of connection. So again, people want real. And back to your alpha vulnerability thing, I love that. Brene Brown says the first real step in courage is vulnerability. It's taking the armor off and it's letting people see who you really are. That's courage. It's freaking hard. None of us enjoy doing it. But when you're willing to do it, you connect with people in a completely different way.
And if you're in sales, I hope you really listen to that there, because what Jordan's saying, I'm selling this NBA player, this NFL player on my services, but how I'm doing that is telling them who I'm not first. And that's like the complete opposite of most sales training, right? Is most sales training is like, you're going to lead with strengths and you're going to tell them all the things you can do for them. And we've seen this in financial services. We see it in, realty. We see it in mortgages. We see it in every different thing, every different walk of life in sales. But if you can lead with who you're not and then get to your strengths, it opens you up. It lets down their wall. Is what you're saying. Like, it lets them know that, oh, this is a real person I'm talking to. They're not just trying to sell me.
That's it.
So good.
Yeah. I think confident humility is the most attractive quality in a leader, so to your point, you can still be really confident in who you are and what you do and what is, but you're willing to own what isn't and what you're not. And, it's like, you should never trust a financial advisor that can't say the words, I don't know. Like, I don't know is actually a really attractive statement for a financial advisor to make, or for any leader to make. Like, I don't know everything. And it's not that I'm minimizing the answer. I'm going to go get the answer if I don't know something. And if it's important to my audience, it's just, I got to be willing to say, I don't know. And here's what it is, Josh. I believe it's a trust and credibility multiplier. It multiplies trust. It multiplies credibility, because down the road, there's going to be a bigger question. There's going to be a more important conversation. And if I was willing to say, I don't know, and own that in a small moment, it means I'm more likely to be trusted down the road when the stakes are higher. So I think this whole idea of leading through vulnerability, doing it the right way, by the way, and here's, because we get this question, people will say, well, how do I know if it's the right timing? Like, I've been through something really significant and I think I'm ready to share it, but I don't know. Here's how you know if it's the right time to share. You're ready to share your story. You're ready to share what you've been through to the benefit of others, to serve others, if you can share it in a way that no longer affects your current identity. So for a long time, I could not share my story because it still was affecting my current identity. And I got to a place where I was okay sharing it, because I had written a few more chapters. God had worked on my heart. You know, my life had taken some different twists and turns. And I thought, okay, God, like, I'm now ready to share. When I share this, it still may be uncomfortable at times or whatever, but it doesn't affect my identity. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, these guys are talking about like vulnerability, I'm not even sure if I can be that, or when to be that, or what's the right timing. You know, it's right when it no longer affects your current identity.
All right. So let's move on to authenticity. One of the things I've heard you say often is you are most effective when you are most authentic. And by the way, if you guys have heard this so far, Jordan is really gifted at memorizing quotes and repeating quotes, like really gifted. I can memorize movie quotes pretty dang well. I can repeat to you all of Anchorman, all of Talladega Nights, all of Zoolander, but Jordan can memorize, and it's a true gift, some really important and impactful quotes. But I think this one is yours. You are most effective when you are most authentic. So why is that so important for leaders to understand? Why do you repeat it so often?
I just want to highlight there, if Ashley Montgomery was listening in, she would say, he can't remember where he set his keys or where he put his wallet, but man, he can remember a quote. So anyway,
or his luggage for that matter,
or luggage. Yeah. You know that all too well. So selective memory, Josh. Yeah, I think the reason it's important to me is because for so long I've struggled with it. You know, if I'm being candid, like and you know this about my journey and my background, like I think I used to be a very inauthentic leader. I was an inauthentic person, and I cared way too much about what people thought of me. And I'm still struggling with that today. I haven't totally overcome, but God's helped me a lot with that. And I think he's just teaching me that, that I'm unique and that people are unique, and he's wired us all in a different way. And if I'm trying to be somebody I'm not, then one of me is irrelevant. And I don't want to live an irrelevant life. I don't think God put me here to be irrelevant. I don't want to have an irrelevant purpose. Like, God designed me with a purpose. I have a calling. He has a plan for my life. And so for me to pursue him and to pursue that calling, I need to really work hard at being me. And I think the reason we struggle with authenticity is because we struggle with comparison. I've struggled with comparison, you know? So quote, Craig Rochelle says, the quickest way to kill something special is to compare it to something else. And the reality is that what you have is special. You've got special gifts. You have special abilities. You know, I'd like to think that God deposited some things in me that are unique, that he designed me in a specific way. And so I don't want to get into, you know, who I am versus who Josh is versus who somebody else is. And it's taken me a while to grow in my confidence and become more secure in myself. But the last thing I'll say on this topic before I turn it back to you, we live in a really, really fake, artificial, superficial world. And now more than ever, authenticity stands out. So if there was ever a time to take a stand and say, hey, this is who I am. These are some of my flaws, you know, these are some of my issues, and not do it in a way, because there's a wrong way to do that, right? Like, I think sometimes people do that for attention, or they try to really stand out by, you know, drawing attention to those things. But just to be you and to be okay with, like, I've got weaknesses, I've got faults. Heck, I can even shine a spotlight on that. I'm willing to own that, to tell you about it. I think people are drawn to that. There is a vulnerability and a transparency that people are so acutely drawn to. And it starts with just being yourself and owning, all of who you are. And I've watched you do that too, more specifically over the last few years. I've just watched you step into your giftedness and your calling and fulfilling the purpose that God has for your life. And so yeah, man, I know that's important to you as well. And I do believe that we're most effective when we're most authentic.
About 6 years ago, you were up here with me and we did a workout. You weren't in as good a shape as you are today, and we'll get to your unrequired workout today as well. So I took you to my gym and we had a killer workout. And there was a trainer there that was yelling at you and yelling at you and yelling at you. And you pulled her aside and said, "Hey, that doesn't work for me." What I want to key on for most leaders is most of your employees, most of the people you lead aren't going to be like Ben and tell you that, "Hey, that doesn't work for me." They're going to fear for their job or whatever it might be. They're not going to speak up. You did.
Well, so there's a lot to that story. Number one, I remember driving with you in the car to the workout. I remember just talking about your passion for being a former athlete the way that you were, and like the way that you kept yourself in shape, like just how intense, like your mindset shifted. Like, it's like, we're going from the office, we're going to get this workout. And it was like, you got your headband on. It was like, holy cow, Kosnick's going to work. And it was a switch that you flipped that I thought was so powerful. And I remember that moment because I was like, man, I'm working out, but I can give more. And you and I had so many conversations around health and performance and peak performance. And we talked about how you have to be an example for the individuals that you lead in everything that you do. And that conversation is a huge part of what kind of flipped that switch for me. And I haven't turned it off since, to just keep pressing, even though we're getting old now, that we can still remain young and healthy and fit. And then to the other point that you mentioned, I think I had mentioned to you, like, you think I can say something to her? Because, I didn't have a relationship with her, but I was like, man, I care enough about coaching that, like, watching her run around and just scream and yell at people, I'm like, hey, those two people over there maybe don't like it. Maybe this guy likes it. But everybody's wired different. And she loved the fact that I shared it with her. At least she said she did. Yeah. But I think for all of us, you have to choose to be courageous in the moment oftentimes.
You earn your independence, you become the coffee bean, you start studying, just pouring into books, pouring into yourself, becoming a recovering addict that continued to pour into that program and the 12-step program that's led you to where you are today. And again, for those that don't know, you are still checking in with sponsor. You're still checking in with parole officer. Tell us a little bit more about that. And then I want to get into, in our last few minutes, your belief in preaching on your secret to life and servant leadership.
Yeah. So I made parole on November 16, 2015. Walked out of a Texas prison, not free, because I'm not free, Josh. I'm on parole until the year 2073. 51 more years on parole, which means every month I see my parole officer, Ms. Braggs here in Beaumont. I pay a fine. I've got to get permission from Texas to leave the state of Texas. I'm about to go on a trip this week, and I'll be in 5 different states, and I had to get 5 different permits to do it. But I'm not worried about parole. Parole is just about following the rules. Everybody in life is on parole, right? I just don't have another second chance. I don't get a third chance in life. If I violate my parole, I go back to prison. I work a program recovery, AA. I don't speak for AA, but I'm in AA. It's my 12-step program recovery. Long ago, 2 years after I got out of prison, parole told me that I was no longer required to bring my AA sign-in sheet. Used to be when I first got out, I had to have sign-in sheets to prove I was going to meetings. It told me you don't have to go to meetings anymore. You don't have to bring a sign-in sheet. I'm like, tell my PO, if I quit going to meetings, I'm going back to prison. And she's like, you get it. Just keep working your program. And that's my program recovery, Josh. In a program recovery, the core tenet of being an AA is service to others, service work. And servant leadership is the secret sauce in life. It's how I've built this new life. And it's how I think other people can build whatever life they want to live. When we get out of the mode of serving ourselves and we look at serving other people, helping other people reach their goals in life, helping to raise other people to a different station in life, that's when we truly start living our lives, because that is what our purpose is in life, is to help other people reach their goals in life. And so that's what my life is today, largely being a servant leader.
That's awesome. How does it heal, hurt, overcome adversity, and build unity? Because I've heard you speak to those things through servant leadership.
Yeah. And so when we become servant leaders, we become less selfish and we become more selfless. And doing that causes us to become a humble person. And humility is when we are right sized, because humility allows us to listen to difficult truths and be able to hear things that we may not even want to hear, but we have to be humble in our lives because we have to be the right size to be useful to other people. And that was the thing Pearl asked me, if you could be remembered for being anything in life, Damien, what would that be in just one word? My one word was useful, because I just want to be useful in this life. So humility allows me to be useful again. And grace is the other secret ingredient to that. To heal, hurt, overcome adversity. Grace is when you give somebody something they do not deserve. And grace is a very difficult thing. Grace is getting something you don't deserve. Justice is getting what you do deserve. Justice was me going to prison. I deserve to go to prison for the crimes that I committed or violating the social contract. But getting grace is what I've gotten when I've been out of this free world now, when everybody has shown me so much grace. Grace is hard, Josh, because it always costs the person giving it more than it costs the person who receives it. But when we can live in a world, with grace, we let go of resentments. Resentments hold us back at life. A resentment is when you hate or hurt over something that somebody's done to you and you can't let it go. It's like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. It's poisonous to eat you up from the inside out, because the person or group or place or political party you resent usually doesn't have a clue that you resent them, so it doesn't bother them. And many times when they find out you do resent them, they don't care. A resentment eats you up from the inside out. And it's this thing, we have to let go of resentments. We have to show humility and grace in all of our endeavors. And that's how we come together as a group of people and as a nation.
Last thing I want the audience to hear from you are, I believe it's the 4 rules of the coffee bean. I just want you to summarize 5 rules. So summarize those real quick for everyone.
But you knocked out one of them. So there's only 4 left. There's have positive body language everywhere you go. Use your smile. Your smile is powerful. Work out on yourself every day in 3 areas: spiritually, mentally, physically. Every day you should be exercising your mind, your body, your soul. The 3rd rule is what we just covered: servant leadership. It's the secret to life. The 4th rule: controlling the controllable. There are 4 things you have control over in this life. It took me going to prison to understand this. I had to be stripped of everything, especially my ego and my pride, to know that I control when I think, when I say, what I feel, and what I do. And that's it. What you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. And the last rule about being a coffee bean, it's that your past does not define you. I don't care what you've done, where you've been, where you were from. That's not you. That's an event that happened in life, and that's in your rearview mirror. Face that windshield, live in the present, live in the moment. Your past is your lesson, the present is a gift, and the future is your motivation, Josh.
What's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others would disagree with?
Here's the unpopular belief I'm going to go with. I think there's a lot of them, but I will say that everything that you see on these social media, rise and grind, work, push it, all of that kind of stuff. And even like the Goggins and the Jackos, I disagree with that. I don't think you have to do that. I totally don't think you have to. I think it's almost a sense where by success, you also can create your own prison. And I think those guys, and I don't know them personally, so I could be completely wrong, but I think those guys have created their own prison with who they've created themselves to be by being these have to get up at 5, have to go. There's nothing wrong with that. If that is your flow of life that works amazing for you, so be it. But I think that it also can work very well you get up at 8 o'clock, you spend the first hour and a half or you spend the first 30 minutes in prayer, you spend the next hour with your kids. Like I've got a really good friend, knees over toes guy. Ben Patrick's his name. He's huge on social media. You know what his morning routine is? It's take his kid for a walk, have breakfast with his family, and he posts on social media once a week. Like that's not what everybody else is saying that you have to do. So I think in this day and age where there's so much like pressure to have to be relevant, I'd flip it the other way. Say try not being relevant. The process or the daily habits. So what are these daily staples that you are working on? Now, if I'm a speaker and a writer, what would that tell you I should probably be doing? I should probably be doubling down on how to become a better storyteller. how to become a better writer. If I'm a writer, I better write. A lot of people say that, hey, well, I'm going to write a book. Well, you're never writing anything ever. So, okay, you got a lot of work to do. You can do it, but you got to start doing it. So you're figuring out what your daily habits, this is your process. So your system, who you are, your God-given strengths, and now you can figure out what these are by, of course, what you're passionate about, but more so what you're gifted at, what you know comes natural to you, but what also other people around you who you can actually trust, who aren't these yes men, are telling you that you're really good at. It's a fun, exciting journey of growth to be able to improve yourself, to improve others. But at the end of the day, there is no end. There's no I made it moment. Never. There isn't. I was just with Allison Felix last week, who's the most decorated female athlete in track and field history. Literally history.
Yeah, amazing athlete.
Incredible. She finally won her gold medal the last Olympics. And someone there had asked her, hey, how'd you feel after you won that gold medal? Her lifetime dream, her top of the mountain. Her answer, not different at all. There's no end. And that's a good thing. There's no top of the mountain, I made it moment. It's a constant continued growth using your gifts God has given you to better other people around you in service mentality to ultimately show them the kingdom.
What do you find the most joy in leading others?
Oh, man. The most joy in leading others. There's a lot. It's tough to say the most, man, because there's a lot. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is watching pre-existing capability being unlocked. As much as I enjoy training and teaching, seeing the light bulb go off on what they're already capable of doing and then doing it, I think brings me more fulfillment than teaching someone how to do something. I'm really reminding you of some things that you already know. And maybe I'm enabling that or providing you some tools or some inspiration or whatever it is, but you already can do this. And as a leader and as a teammate, I may be helping you just see that for what it is. That's quite fulfilling.
Yeah, that's really good. And what do you think is the greatest leadership attributes, people that you enjoy following, that you would go to battle with? Because I know you've experienced, as we all have, good and bad leadership. The great ones, what do they have that would make Nick follow?
The greatest, and greatest is a strong word, but if you look at like the pinnacle, right, of leadership, I would argue that it is based on values, that you are following them and you are allowing them to influence you based predominantly on who they are and what they represent and the way they live their life through values and integrity. And you've been around it enough where you've seen it. You've seen the way that they live. And I think when you start to lead by that level of example, it is what enables leaders to lead in a through capacity. And I'll just say here, with like Green Berets, we specialize in unconventional warfare. There's a lot of words in there. Two of the key words is with and through, right? We conduct operations with and through indigenous personnel or whoever we're working with. With requires us to physically be there. It's based on proximity, right? If I'm doing something with someone, I'm there with them. If I'm doing something through somebody, I don't have to be anywhere near them at all. In fact, I could be dead and I could still influence them because you're changing some of the emotions that you're using to create that influence effect. Operating in a through capacity, meaning proximity is completely irrelevant, I think is largely based on having seen the way someone lives their life through values and through integrity. And therefore they can continue to influence you no matter where they are in relation to you, arguably indefinitely.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good. Some I guess this will be somewhat in the same vein, but it's more on mindset. And the Spartan leadership community is familiar with the warrior mindset, based on some past guests and just episodes that we've had, but I would love for you to reinforce the concept. What is the warrior mindset, not just in the military, but also in the household and in business?
I use the warrior mindset as a buzz phrase, which is the entire first section of my book, and it all talks about the mentality, and I cultivated that from the warrior ethos, which is 4 principles that exist within the soldier's creed. Soldier's creed is the first thing that you learn when you decide to become a soldier in the United States Army, and it is just buried in your head like most creeds are. It's part of the indoctrination process of becoming a soldier. It's part of the whole thing. The warrior ethos are part of the soldier's creed, and there's 4 tenets. I'll always place the mission first. I'll never accept defeat. I'll never quit. I'll never leave a fallen comrade. That is the warrior ethos, and I use those tenets to train and teach on this warrior mindset. Because although all 4 of those things have a very strong military tone, obviously, it's translatable and relatable to anybody, no matter what you do, right, professionally or otherwise. And they all translate into one word. And these are 4 words that are very common. Again, this isn't revolutionary. These are words that you, for sure, and then every one of your listeners, guaranteed, have all heard before. I will always place the mission first is discipline. In my opinion, is at the foundation of success. It's at the foundation of progress. Without discipline, the game's already over. Right? Mm-hmm. The willingness to do whether you feel like it or not, essentially, is discipline.
It's the starting line.
It's the starting point. That is how the foundation is built or strengthened, so you can continue to build upon it. I'll always place the mission first is discipline. I'll never accept defeat is resilience. All right. Mental toughness, the ability to get back up after getting knocked down, the ability to continue to move in the face of failure, the ability to continue to move in the face of adversity. I will never quit sounds very familiar to the previous one. I will never quit translates into persistence. And there is an overlap between persistence and resilience. One really enables the other. What makes persistence unique is it's continuing to move forward in the face of adversity, but also in the face of success. And I think that's where high performers have a unique relationship with persistence. I'm going to keep going even after I hit the milestone. It's the ability to zero in on the next objective and continue to climb and stretch and grow. Whereas many of us want to stay on that mountaintop and enjoy the view for a really long time, if not indefinitely. And we've just become content with that one win. So persistence. And then lastly, I will never leave a fallen comrade is commitment, because that's what I will never leave a fallen comrade is. It's a commitment to your teammate and to yourself. Under no circumstances am I going to leave you behind. It's a willingness to do whatever it takes by any righteous means necessary. And then that, of course, spans into a lot of tactics and strategy and actual 3-dimensional decision-making on the ground. But the warrior mindset to me is discipline, resilience, persistence, and commitment